Welcome back, everyone. We're diving into a case that you guys sent us a ton of info about. Janet Luxford. Disappeared in Bessemer, Alabama, 2001.
Yeah, tragic case, a missing persons case that, well, I guess you could say it took a really unexpected turn.
Definitely. 21 years later, her boyfriend, Brian Jones, walks into a police station and confesses to her murder.
Wow, that's a long time. Makes you wonder what was going on in his head all those years. Why confess now?
Right. I mean, to really get this, we got to go back to the beginning. Janet was originally from Jacksonville, Florida, moved to Bessemer for, a fresh start to be with Brian.
New beginning, new life, always tragic when that gets cut short.
Her family described her as a quiet person, a loving mother, just wanted to be happy.
It's heartbreaking.
What's even crazier, her daughter reported her missing in 2002, meaning a whole year went by before anyone officially started looking.
Yeah, a whole year unaccounted for, almost like a hidden chapter in the story. You have to wonder what was happening during that time, what Brian was telling people.
Seriously, how do you live with yourself for 21 years, knowing what you did, living in that community? It's like
living a double life, almost. This dark secret hidden beneath the surface. Psychologically, that's a fascinating aspect of this case.
I mean, it's got to weigh on you. Decades of guilt, fear of getting caught. Did something finally push him over the edge?
Yeah.
Or was it just like this slow burn of, I don't know?
It's hard to say. I mean, the sources we have don't really dive into Brian's specific motivations for confessing, but cases like this often suggest some sort of breaking point, like a pressure cooker.
Okay, so not a sudden burst of remorse or fear of finally getting caught after all these years.
It's possible. Or maybe a combination of things. The guilt, the fear, always looking over his shoulder. It all builds up. And then, boom, you can't keep it in anymore.
And he just walks into the police station. Like, what did he actually say? How did he confess?
Well, according to the reports, he admitted to arguing with Janet, said it escalated, and he struck her with a golf club in a fit of rage.
A golf club is just so brutal.
Yeah. And then he hid her body in a suitcase, buried it near Valley Creek.
A suitcase. That's not just hiding a body. It's like trying to erase her completely.
It does add another layer to it, doesn't it? The premeditation, the coldness.
And based on what he told them, they actually found Janet's remains. Can you imagine? Finally knowing what happened, but at the same time.
It's closure, but it's also a confirmation of their worst fears after 21 years of not knowing.
And what about the people in Bessemer, the seemingly normal guy living among them, to find out he was capable of something so horrific?
The reports described it as complete shock, disbelief. This was someone they might have known, worked with, lived next to. This idea that we can truly know someone, it shatters that.
Yeah, it really makes you think anyone could be hiding something. So what happened after the confession? Legally, I mean.
Well, he pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 21 years in prison. A year for each year Janet was missing.
Wow. A year for every year. That's
symbolic, isn't it? Like, the judge was acknowledging the weight of each year that Janet's family spent in limbo.
It's heavy stuff. While this gives some closure, it must be tough on the family to hear him describe what he did, to relive it all.
It's unimaginable, but it also shows their strength. They were there. They spoke up for Janet, made sure her voice was heard.
Incredible. But it leaves us with so many questions. What was going on in his head all those years? What finally made him confess? There's a whole psychological puzzle here. And that's what we'll try to unpack next.
It really makes you think, no new evidence, no pressure from the police. It was all him.
Yeah, like what goes through someone's mind to make them do that after so long? I mean, was it something specific that happened or?
Well, there's an idea in psychology called cognitive dissonance. It's like this mental discomfort you feel when your actions don't match up with how you see yourself.
So like he thought of himself as a good person, but then he did this horrible thing.
Right, and to keep up that act for years, decades even. I mean, just think about the energy it takes to hide the truth, to make up stories all the time.
It must be exhausting. And then on top of that, there's always the fear, right? Like, what if someone figures it out?
Oh, absolutely. Even if you think you got away with it, that fear of being caught, it never really goes away.
So he's dealing with guilt. He's looking over his shoulder constantly. It's like he's trapped.
Exactly. And in some cases, it just becomes too much. The person can't handle it anymore and they need some kind of release.
So he confesses to feel better, even if it means going to jail. But is that really remorse? Or is it just a selfish way to ease his own suffering?
That's a tough question to answer. We can't really know what was going on in his mind, but some experts might say that any confession, even if it's for selfish reasons, means there's still some conscience in there, some desire to make things right.
But even if that's true, it doesn't change what happened to Janet and her family. 21 years they had to deal with not knowing, with the pain of losing her.
Right, and their story shows just how powerful hope and resilience can be, even when you're facing something so awful. They never stopped searching for the truth. They never gave up on getting justice for Janet.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
And in a way, it was their determination that led to the confession.
You could say that. It proves how important it is for families to keep fighting, to never lose hope. And it wasn't just Janet's family. The whole community of Bessemer was involved.
The sources talked about vigils, people sharing information, supporting the family, even after all those years. It shows that even in the darkest times, there's still compassion and goodness.
That kind of community support makes a huge difference for families who are going through something like this. It gives them strength, and it keeps the case alive.
So we have the confession, we know what happened to Janet, but it also raises new questions, right?
That's the thing about closure. Sometimes getting answers just leads to more questions, more pain. In Janet's case, we know how she died, but we also see the horrible truth about Brian and the lies he lived for all those years.
It's a good reminder that the truth isn't always easy to deal with. And I can't even begin to imagine what Janet's daughter went through when she found out the truth, when she had to face the man who took her mother away.
Her story is one of incredible courage and strength. She turned her pain into something positive and became an advocate for other families of missing persons. And that's what we'll talk about in the next part of our deep dive.
It's got to be so tough to go through all of that. The disappearance, the years of not knowing, and then finally the truth. It's just unimaginable.
And what's really amazing is that she didn't let it break her. She actually took all that pain and turned it into something good. She became an advocate for other families of missing persons.
Wow, to use her experience to help others going through the same thing. It's incredible.
Yeah, the sources describe her as a real force. She's out there raising awareness, supporting families, pushing for changes in the law to help solve these cases. She's turned her mom's memory into something that can help others.
It's like a way to keep her mom's spirit alive. And it shows that love can really inspire people to make a difference, even after a tragedy like this.
And her family, too. They've been working to keep Janet's memory alive. They have these gatherings every year to share stories and make sure she's not forgotten.
It's a beautiful way to honor her, to celebrate her life instead of just focusing on how it ended.
Right. It's about remembering that every missing person is more than just a case file. They had lives, they had people who loved them.
So true. And while this case did end with a confession and a conviction, there are still so many families out there who are still waiting for answers.
It reminds us that this fight for justice never really ends. It takes dedication and a belief that even the toughest mysteries can be solved. Janet's case is proof of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it shows how important it is for communities to come together and support families of missing persons. Every little bit helps.
Definitely. When a community gets involved, it not only helps the family emotionally, but it also keeps the case in the spotlight, which can lead to new information and breakthroughs.
Well, as we wrap up our deep dive into Janet Luxford's story, what's the one thing that sticks with you? What we remember about this case?
For me, it's the power of hope and resilience. Even in the face of something so terrible, Janet's family never gave up, and they were able to find answers and use their experience to help others. It's truly inspiring.
I completely agree. And I think it also shows that justice isn't always just about punishment. Sometimes it's about finding peace and remembering the person who was lost. In this case, it was a bit of both.
Well said. And for our listener who may be dealing with their own questions about unsolved mysteries or who are looking for strength in difficult times, Janet's story gives us a powerful message of hope and resilience. It reminds us that even in the face of tragedy, we can still find meaning and purpose, and that even the most complicated puzzles can be solved with determination and perseverance,